Why, hello there everyone and welcome to the third part of the tutorial series which on how to make a mod in Assetto Corsa, and I must greatly apologise for having taken so fucking long to get to this point of actually editing and recording this part. I greatly apologise, and I want to thank all of you because I've recently looked on YouTube and I've noticed, hey, what's this then? Is this 1,000 subscribers? Yes, it is. Holy shit. Thank you all so much for helping me achieve this goal, this milestone in a YouTube career, so to say. So thank you very much. But I won't delay this any longer than it has to be, because I have a relatively long video plus already old recorded sound files that are for the third part of the tutorial series, so I hope you just enjoy this. You can follow along. If you have any questions, please just drop them down into the comments below, because that's what they are for. I'll answer as many as I can, and as quickly as I can. Again, I greatly apologise for not having done shit in the last few months, or over a year probably in total now, but it's been a bit rough for me personally in my personal life, so again, please do apologise. However, I'll stop yapping now. You enjoy the video, and again, if there's any questions, down below in the comments. So here we find ourselves in Blender once again, the program that we all despise. Probably, I'm sorry, that was loud. The program that we all despise, I'm pretty sure. So here is exactly this perspective which we were left off with, which is the side profile view of a wonderful Mazda 2 that we are creating. And you can see it's all grey, which is because we're in the solid mode of our viewport shading right up here. We can, to view our materials, we can click on this second button right here, or we could just hit Z and go to material preview. And left click, because that's how computers work. Anyway, so welcome to our material preview, and now the car is white, which helps a lot. However, we can fix this, which is what this tutorial is about. So we can either go up here into the shading tab, which will give us a view of the vehicle up here, and this window down here, and some things on the side. And if you are just working with Blender for like one of your first times, I recommend this, because the people working on Blender have set this up for just exactly that. So and these are basically what we're gonna need. We're gonna need this, we're gonna need this, and we're gonna need this down here. And this does not need to be big. We can have this as small as it is here, and we will be fine. So what we want to do as the very first thing is make a car paint shader. And we're not going very deep into making shaders or materials or whatever you want to call them. All we need to do in Blender here is essentially make an image that we then link to the car body to display as the color. So what we want to do up here is zoom in a bit and select some part of the car body that has the car paint. And because this model already came with a few shaders, we do have a car paint shader down here already. Now, we're just missing a base color, which is set to white here, and we can change that to whatever we want, really. But that's not how Assetto Corsa reads this. You see, games base their materials on image files, so we need an image here that we can use as a source for this color information. So what we want to do is hit Shift A down here to bring up this menu, then S for search, or just Shift A, enter, whatever you want, or I guess you can also do left click, it's whatever, and type in image. Here we can now insert an image texture, which we can link to our base color, which will return to this this black gray type of dark gray color, which is what I want in this case, but this image texture is empty. So there is no image here, which is just no information, so it's being displayed as black. So we can click new here, or for the sake of this, because we have this image editor over here, I'm going to use this. Just going to make it a bit bigger. And also do this. There we go. We have this image editor over here, and we can click new up here. And now it's basically asking us what parameters we want to set for the image we're creating. And because this is all going to be a solid color and it's all going to be the same color, we don't need a very high resolution image. So we can just go 32 by 32 pixels, and it doesn't matter because it's all the same color. Hello, here is a future me again, with a little bit of a bong to myself, because in fact for the car body texture, so for the car paint, you do not want a low resolution texture, because you will end up having to calculate an ambient occlusion map, which doesn't quite work well with a full 32 by 32 image file. So you either want to go 2K or preferably even 4K if you would like a higher resolution ambient occlusion map. This ambient occlusion map is pretty much necessary if you want to have end up having a good looking paint material. So go with a higher resolution texture. Don't worry, I will be using a higher resolution texture in this very tutorial as well, because I do notice that I fucked up myself. But just a heads up, start with a bigger texture just from the get-go so you don't have to recreate it later. Initially I wanted a black color, but to make it a little more interesting, we're going to choose something other than black. So here you can change the brightness, which is stated as the value down here. Then you can change the hue and saturation here. What I want to do is a dark red. I want a dark red Mazda, so I'm going to make a dark red Mazda. This is the dark red I want. If you want the color for some reason, here's the hex code. And now we want to give it a name, and we do want to give it a name because we're going to create multiple images in this, and we don't want one to overlap the other image, so we're going to give this a name. I'm going to call this car body paint. I can type paint. There we go. And just hit OK. Now this image is created over here, and over here in this tab we can now choose this in this drop down menu right here as the car body paint, which is now being displayed here. It looks not very well. Technically we can go over here and fix this now, but this is not going to help us very much in the game at the end. So you can change this here just if you want, but you don't have to. What we want to do now is choose all the objects that are going to be using this car paint, and because this material already exists, it's been applied to most of the pieces of this car that are going to have this color. However, not all, and if you're creating materials from scratch, so if there's none in your scene, you may have to just assign them to each and every bit yourself, which you can do by selecting it, going up here in the drop down menu, selecting car paint, and so on and so forth. However, there is a simpler way. You apply it to one piece, then you select the other piece, in our case this bumper, which has a strange secondary car paint color. Then you shift left click any of the pieces that already have the color, or if you want to color multiple ones, you go to bab, and then you select the one that has the color already. Then you hit Ctrl L for the transfer data or link data menu, and you click on link materials. Now the material is being applied to all the things you have selected as passive objects. So in this case, the ones that have this darker orange outline. And this is how you basically transform materials from one thing to the other. This car body paint image texture here is however nowhere. It's just within this Blender file, which is not what we want. We want this to be accessible by Assetto Corsa. So what we're going to do is be over here, have like left clicked or something over here, then hitting Alt S brings up this very menu right here. And now, since I'm already in the project folder for the Mazda 2, there is a texture folder that we have created in the very first video, if you remember. Now, in this texture folder, I'm going to save this car body paint texture as an image. And now it is saved. Now, Assetto Corsa is capable of reading this texture file and linking it to the material that is applied to this car. Now, of course, we need to do all these things with the other textures as well, which is just a lot of work, really. It's always the same thing. You select an object, create a material, or use the material that is already provided, add an image texture, create the image over here, or you can also, if we go in here, we can also create the image texture right here, but you still need to go over into this view to save the image texture itself. So you can also just create it here if you want. And then bring that and save that into the texture folder. For glass, since I've already selected this, there is a little trick you can do. If you already exported a car from Assetto Corsa into an FBX file, then you will have a texture folder somewhere which you could use as a sort of library for textures. For example, I have done so myself, and I'm going to use this very folder right here, which is from the V50, as you can maybe see from here and up here. A mod that I'm still kind of working on, and there's a few essential textures that you want. For example, I have this glass.png texture, which is essentially a black square with a transparency set to something a little lower, to like 60%, 40, maybe something around that, which is a texture we want. You also want this mirror place, one which every Assetto Corsa mod will have, or if you do not have that in your Assetto Corsa export texture folder, you can find it somewhere else. And this somewhere else is your Assetto Corsa folder. As always, it kind of provides everything you really need, and to find this very texture, you want to go into SDK, then into dev, and in here you want to go to the car_pipeline_2.0 rev. I think I've mentioned this before, this car pipeline, which basically guides you a bit through the process of making a mod, but it's not very well explained necessarily. But in this very folder you have the pipeline PDF file, but what you want in this case is the common textures folder. In here you should have this mirror placement JPEG file, which is quite important for Assetto Corsa. I am not 100% certain whether this is in here from the get-go. I think it is. If it isn't, please let me know in the comments down below, because I know I've done things in this folder. I've added or removed, well, I may have removed files, I may have added files, I'm not too sure anymore, but I'm pretty sure this mirror placement JPEG file is in here from the get-go. Now, back in our Mazda 2 folder, project folder, we want to go into the texture folder where we saved our body paint PNG file, and I'm just going to pull this mirror placement JPEG over here and make sure to copy it and not move it, because you do want it in here. I'm not going to do damaged glass. I am going to take this null.dds file, however, and copy this over here as well, because this is essentially can be used as a detail map if there is no detail. You want to add this just to make sure that the shaders and the materials work correctly. You want to have the detail slot occupied in the KS editor if you have one, so that's what this null.dds is used for. We are also going to take the flat normal map DDS, which is in pretty much every texture folder from any exported vehicle. I'm going to take this flat normal map and copy it over. I'm also going to get this black plastic, which are all files I've created using the method I've displayed here for the car paint, so you could just create those yourself and just reuse them time and time again, because it's the same thing you're going to do. So what else do we want to pull over? Well, I'm going to take my taillight glass here to copy, and as well as this glass PNG that I have made. These two I'm going to use for the glass. And last but not least, because I always use the same tire mesh, I'm going to take these two as well. These are from a mesh, from a tire, from I think the BMW M4 from Assetto, but do not quote me on this, I am not entirely sure. Now this is all the things we're going to need, I think, for this. taking a look again. I'm also going to grab this chrome actually, just in case. But now I can close this folder and we can focus on our lovely Mazda again. The next thing I want to do here is the glass. It's rather simple really. We select the glass, we open up our folder here, take our glass PNG file and move it over here, connect this up, and we're good with the glass. Now, for some models, sometimes depending on where you get them, there will be different glass for the passenger cabin, which is often called green glass, which is true. The glass, the windows here, they do have a slight green tint on normal cars, but we don't need this here. So we're going to select all of these windows. Going to select this and do the same thing again that I showed you earlier with the car paint. Control L, link materials, and there you go. You have now a weird looking but working glass shader, which is gonna work properly once you are in the KS editor and configure things properly. At this point, I would suggest pulling up an image of the car you're trying to recreate, just so you have a reference of what is plastic, what is chrome, which is exactly what I'm going to do now. Here we have this image of the Mazda 2, which I'm going to now move to my second monitor so I can take a look at it while I'm working on this car. And all I really have to do now is select these bits. This, for example, already has a material that is called black. So I'm going to open up my texture folder right here. And I'm going to notice, I don't have a black texture. Well, that's simple. We go down here, image texture, connect this up, and now I'm going to show you this with creating the image down here. Click new, gonna stay 32 pixels because it's still just the color. I'm gonna go into the HSV, set the value to 0, which makes it black. Gonna call it plastic, and hit OK. Now this has a black color, and everything that has this material black is also going to have a black color. Now over here we still do have our wonderful red car paint shader, but when you click up here, click plastic, we can again tab Alt S. Then we are in the Mazda 2 texture folder again. I'm going to save this as plastic, and it's saved. Now looking at the pictures again, we have a few more things here. For example, behind this grille there would be the intercooler, which in this case I guess is part of the front bumper. And here's something you might encounter when you are working with models. Some objects have two different materials, and this is something I'm gonna take the safe route on, rather than just going over here into the materials tab and selecting the black 0 and just configuring it the way, or just changing it out for the normal black, which would fix it. This is fine. You can leave it like this and it would probably be fine, but I like to just make sure and separate the mesh into two different ones, so each mesh has its own material. For that, we're going to go into the edit mode and we're going to deselect everything by hitting Alt A, or A twice, whatever you prefer, or just clicking somewhere outside of this mesh, then hitting P and clicking separate by material. And now exiting edit mode, we have two different meshes, one that is this plastic and one that is the bumper with its normal color. Now I'm going to finish setting up the different materials this car has and make sure there's no material left that does not have a texture file attached to it, because if there is, KS Editor is going to throw a tantrum and it's not going to be happy about you. So make sure every material has a texture, or materials that you don't think are that necessary, just replace them with the plastic material. Because no matter whether there's no image attached to the material, like no texture file, or that there is no material, both these things are hated by both KS Editor and Assetto Corsa. So make sure that every material you use has a texture file attached to it, and make sure that every object in your scene has a material attached to it. That's the only two rules, and we'll see each other once I'm finished setting up the materials for all the bits in this scene. here we are with every mesh having a material assigned to it, and each of these materials has a normal 32 by 32 texture file, except for the rims which have a 2K and the body which has a 4K texture, which are both important because both of these need a reflection map, and that can easily be calculated within Assetto Corsa, within the content manager to be specific. You can do that technically here in Blender because they use the ambient occlusion map, but in this case we're going to use the content manager because it's just simpler and it is not as much of a faff as Blender is in this. But in order to actually use this, we have to do one last thing, which is UV unwrapping this. And for that, we can go over into the UV editing tab. And in here, we're going to be in the edit mode of our selected object. And we're going to have this is definitely one of the UV unwraps of all time. Essentially, what this means is it's going to flatten out the whole 3D model, and you can arrange how a texture is displayed upon it. And what we want here in this case is to exit edit mode, and then we want to select all the objects that have a car paint on them. In this case, that is going to be all of these. If you're not certain which ones you've forgotten, you can hide the selected objects by hitting H. And you can see we've forgotten the door handles. That's about it, I think. And once you're sure you have everything selected, hit Alt H to unhide everything, and you have the unhid items selected. So now with all the things that do have the car paint material assigned to them selected, we're going to hit Tab to go into the edit mode and hit A to really make sure you have everything selected. And right off the bat, we can see a bit of a chaos over here. We have overlaying UV maps, which is not what you want. You want them assigned. You want them basically to be displayed next to each other. Otherwise, something that may appear on the bonnet right here will also end up being displayed on this quarter panel back here. And when calculating the ambient occlusion map later, this will either crash your content manager or take hours to calculate, because it's essentially trying to overlap one thing with another while all this is being essentially calculated within each other. So this is not going to work. So what we want to do really is be over here, hit U, and then click unwrap. In most cases, this is all you need to do. This is the most simple thing ever. You're going to have everything displayed here. It may look a little odd like this, or like this, but most models are made in a sort of reasonable way, are modeled in a reasonable way that this works, and these are not going to be strangely disfigured or torn apart or anything. If your model, however, does not end up with a clean unwrap like this one, for example, this side is a bit bigger than this side for some reason of the front bumper. Over here, when you hit U, you can hit click Smart UV Project. Leave these settings as they are pretty good, and click OK. This is going to be unwrapping your car, and as in the settings right here, the angle limit basically indicates at what angle of edge, essentially, when you have one face coming from one side and you have the face on the other side of this edge between two vertices, from what angle onwards do we break this up into two separate pieces over here in the unwrapping menu. This always works. This is fantastic, and it's gonna end up most likely saving your life in a lot of cases, because you don't have to do the unwrapping essentially manually, where you have to place seams, and then this, and then that. This does everything for you. But since the unwrapping on this car is done sensibly, I'm gonna use this. If you can't use this, use the other one. It's really, really simple. We're gonna do the same thing for one of the wheels real quick. Just select one. We don't want all of them to be displayed next to each other. We want them to have individual maps. So we go here, we click U, we click unwrap, and this is one of the cases where it's not well done. look at this. This is a mess. So what we're going to do is go Smart UV Project, click OK, and it's going to be displayed in a chaos, yes, but this is good enough for Assetto Corsa. These are very close to each other, so what I want to do is increase the island margin. Therefore, we definitely don't have overlapping things. And now this is unwrapped. We're going to do the same thing for each wheel individually, or since these are all the same object, I'm going to select every single one of these wheels, with the already unwrapped one being the last one, so the active one, Control L, and copy UV maps. Now if we go look at the UV map of this one, it's going to have the same UV map as this one. Because they are the same object, you can copy the UV map over. And this is all the material work you're gonna do in Blender. This is all you need to do, and the next steps onwards are gonna be all KS Editor things, and then finally Concept Manager things. But that's it for today. We've set up the materials on the Blender side of things. Now we all need to just transport that over into Assetto Corsa. And don't worry, we're gonna add the tires next time around. So see you all next time. I hope I could help you a bit. Have a good day. Stay safe, everyone, and goodbye.